What's in a word? In this case, a lot. Let's dive into some of the ancient Greek botanical names and figure out why some of these plants, processes, or structures within a plant have been named the way that they are. Hi, my name is Memo, this is my channel, Houseplantygoodness, and essentially it's a place where I like to geek out about my big passion. You might be able to see some of it behind me, it's tropical houseplants. So as I said at the very beginning of the video, this has been a video that I've been thinking about doing for a while, and it is kind of diving into kind of words and language that we use around plants. Now, before I lose all of you, there is a good reason why I wanted to kind of dive into this, because it tells us a bit more about the plants, about some of their processes, their structures, and it goes without saying that language defines all of us in one way or another. Even more so specifically when we're looking at the plants that we all hold dear. Now, before I dive into kind of any of the kind of origins, at least the Greek origins that I can speak from because I am Greek, the thing that I kind of want everybody to kind of hone in on or be aware of, there is a reason, and I don't know how many people might know this, there is a reason why scientifically a lot of the kind of reasoning behind using scientific terms instead of common terms, and I'll give you some examples. Just quick question to everybody, how many plants, just looking at houseplants, how many plants do you know that are called the money plant or the money tree? There's a lot of them, and it depends on the culture and it depends on the plant, and a lot of things could be called the same thing because common words or common names for plants are more culturally relevant to whichever culture is naming that plant via its common name. However, the one thing that is consistent across the board is the scientific terminology of the plants, and that is part of the reason why these kind of more botanical terms exist. And I know, this can be exceptionally boring, and I was kind of with you in the beginning when I was first starting on my journey with plants. I'm just sitting there going, oh my God, I'm going to have to learn all these botanical names. But it slowly does build up, and your knowledge does build up. There's also kind of this weird generational thing where you get a lot of the very, very old growers, at least here in the UK, I'm thinking more of the kind of the gardening variety, old generation, where they're just like, if you cannot name all of these plants with their botanical names and you're not a proper like green-thumbed person, I'm not going to touch on the green thumb situation, but you're not a planty person, you cannot call yourself, that is utter rubbish. You can still be a great person at dealing with your plants and being able to grow things happily and learn and grow yourself alongside your plants without knowing all the botanical or the scientific names. However, there is a place and a time for them. And I just wanted to address kind of verbiage and kind of the words of it all in the hobby that we all love so dearly. So I've prattled on enough in terms of an intro. Let's dive into, and I'm going to do this as a quick fire, and dive into some of these words, and yeah, let's begin. And I've got a list of words that is going to be alphabetical, so there is that order, just to kind of bear in mind, and I have got a trusty list down below, so if you ever see me looking down, it's because I'm trying to refresh myself. There's a lot of terms that I want to get through. I am not telling you how many. I've got a list down here, but we shall see, and I will put the number on the title of the video, hopefully. So starting with the A word, so Acanthaceae, and this is usually related to our kind of prickly plants. So things with thorns, and I'll tell you kind of how it originates from Greek, because anganthi or anganthi is just a prick basically, or a thorn. So acanthaceae would to me signify something that has got thorns. See, people are not very imaginative when they come up with these names. They're just like, it has a thorn, let's call it thorns, right? How about Anthurium? So that might be one that you might not have been aware that it's got kind of Greek origins. And it is one word, but if you need to break it into two words to see its origins. So anthos, the anthur, And that is just literally in Greek, it means the bloom or the flower. And urium or oura in Greek means tail, right? And I know before you all say this, a lot of the actual Oraceae have got similar inflorescences, but it literally just means, look, it's a plant that has got a flower that looks like a tail, right? And it's to do with the bloom specifically. One that I love, and I can actually show you an example of this one. So, apical. So, apex literally means, or apex, as people might be kind of aware of it in kind of more the English language, is the tip, the top of something. And that kind of originates from there. And it kind of links into one of my favorite plant processes, and I am showing you this for a reason. It's about kind of interrupting the apical dominance. And by that, it's when you chop the top growing point of any plant, and what will then happen is you've released that apical dominance, the apex, the tip dominance, and then what it will then signal to the plant is start branching out lower and try to create a new apex at that point. So it's really, really cool. The kind of concept of that is when you're trying to create plants with branching. So you're not just got the one stem, but you've got a more bushy, kind of branched out plant. How about calyx? So if you've ever seen a bloom, and I'm trying to think if I've got anything that might be in bloom that I might be able to show you in my space currently. I don't think so. Ironically enough, I don't think so. I think, I do. Let me see if I can grab something and show you. No, interestingly enough, that is not one that has got that. So calyx is something that you might see sometimes when you're looking at blooms, and can you notice sometimes when they've got those little petals, so kind of like almost like green leaves at the base. So the bloom is here and it's just around it and it's got those green leaf-like structures there. That sometimes, I think it's also called the sepal, but it's also sometimes called a calyx. And calyx in ancient Greek would have been something to signify a cup, which, I mean, you can kind of see where they went with that word. And this is a good one, chlorophyll. Yeah? We all know chlorophyll is what makes all of the plants green a color. But the origin of the word, again, is two words combined into one. First one being chloros, which is a chloro, and it literally means something that is green. See what they did there? They're very ingenious there. And chlorophyll, the phyll or philo, is literally just a leaf. Phylon is a leaf. So can you see what they did there? Can you see what they did there? They're just like, oh yes, leaf green, chlorophyll, right? That's kind of where it would originate from. So it's not rocket science if you kind of know the meanings behind it. And part of the reason why I'm doing this video is to hopefully be able to make some of these words connect in your brain a bit more, because if you know what they mean, and it just means a description of what it is, it should hopefully be a bit easier to understand and kind of retain the information. At least that's my theory behind this. Closely related to this is, have you ever heard something being called chlorotic? That is linked to one another because, again, chloros is green, but chlorosis usually is something that starts to, when the green starts to go yellow. So that one's a bit more of a stretch there, but you can kind of remember that it's kind of linked into it. So chlorophyll is green leaves. Chlorosis is when green leaves start losing their green. Maybe that's how you remember the chlorosis. How about dendrobium? Again, two words merged into the one. Dendro or dendrum is literally tree. That's what we call a tree. So a tree is a dendro. And the biome or vios in Greek, vios means to live, basically. Right? I can't believe I said it. It means to live. I'm living my best big fat Greek wedding here. Give me a word, any word that tell you how it originated from Greece, yes? I think these ones did actually originate from Greek, so hopefully I'm not overstepping the bounds here. Correct me if anybody, because I don't have any background in Latin. And it's quite tricky sometimes of these because I can make the connections based on the words that I'm seeing. And one of the words that kept coming up again and again and again was something for Oraceae. that it was originally Greek, and I'm just like, it doesn't sound Greek, but it might be because my ancient Greek is a bit rusty. To me, that would not signify ancient Greek, that would signify more on the Latin origin. But, and we have got a word that is coming up, which originated from ancient Greek. It was then Latinized, and you'll kind of see it, and I'll kind of talk about that in a bit more detail. Right, the next one, I'll use a kind of an example. So, has anybody heard of dichotomous? It is something that is prevalent in plants. Arguably, we see it sometimes in the tropical house plants. It might not be that we see it in our own environments, but it might happen more in nature. You definitely see this with a lot of other plants. So this is linked to apex and the apical dominance that we were talking about before. So a really busted kind of pink princess, marble pink princess. But say you release that apical dominance and then you get branching that will happen at two different points equally. That means that is the dichotomous split of leaves, and then if they keep doing the same thing, it keeps splitting or branching dichotomously. And it literally, in the Greek, kind of the Greek origin of the word, is that one word is dichotomos, and it literally means to split in two. Again, see what I mean? It's not that imaginative. It's not a big stretch as to what it is and what it is describing. It's just literally kind of going, you know what? It is this, so we will call it that. Oh, this is a good one. So epidermis. So sometimes you can see when people are talking about it, and this can also apply to humans as well. There's an epidermis on the human's skin, and there's also an epidermis on a lot of the plants as well. So what it literally translates into is epi, upon, derma is skin. So upon the skin. Do you see what I mean? 1 and 1 equals 2. It's very, very simple. And the one we all know, and hopefully you've learned this by now because I've mentioned it enough time, epiphyte. So epi, again, upon, and then phyto, the phytite, the epiphyte part of it is phyto, so upon a plant. You know, again. So if any of these plants are growing upon something else, upon another plant, they are epiphytic. So you know when you see kind of orchids or other plants that might be growing on trees, they are epiphytic because it means to be upon another plant. It's very simple, really. And very closely linked to this is hemiepiphyte. Again, the hemi means half. So half epiphytic. So it doesn't have to spend its life fully epiphytically on a plant. So it doesn't always have to be upon a plant. It can be half that. And again, similar thing, similar vibes. So lithophyte. Have you heard of lithophyte? Sometimes you might get this with some of your more kind of succulent or kind of cacti type plants. Lithophyte, not always, you can also get this with some of the tropical plants as well. I think people tend to forget that as well. Lithophyte, so phyte, remember, we talked about phyte, so it's kind of plant. And then lithos literally means stone or rock. So lithophyte is a plant that grows on rocks. Yeah, see that, see that, see that? And again, this is the thing that people tend to forget sometimes. And this can be equally true for a lot of the orchids, not orchids, begonias. Oh, my brain to this morning. Obviously not had enough coffee. But there are a lot of begonias that are lithophytic. So that edict where it's just like, you need to keep your begonia evenly moist all the time, depends on the begonia, because if it's a lithophytic begonia, and granted you might say, you know what, it's going to be in a tropical rainforest, so it's always going to have some moisture around it. Yes, but it also might mean that it needs a bit of a drying period rather than it just being constantly evenly moist. Make sense? Anybody's ever used the word mesophyll? So mesophyll, again, phyll, phyto or philo in this case is leaf. Mesos or messi literally means the middle, so the middle of the leaf. People that like to sow seeds, whether or not it's for the garden or even for houseplants, but there's a lot of houseplants that could be grown from seed. Obviously not just the anthuriums. You might have heard the word monocotyledon. 2 words again into one. So cotyledon is literally the seed leaf, and people that have been growing seeds, for instance, for vegetables and stuff like that will kind of know some of this terminology. And mono, or mono, is one. So one seed leaf, monocotyledon. Conversely, dicotyledon, two of the cotyledon leaves from the seed. See what they did there? Again, it's not particularly difficult. They're just smashing words together that mean the thing that they're looking at. The scientists, they were kind of coming up with these names. And we're finally at the word that I was telling you before was a bit of a confusion. So Nepenthes. And this one was an interesting one. I kind of really dived in hard with this one. And I do actually have a Nepenthes, let me show you. Do not judge me on how janky my Nepenthes is, and I do know I've got some dried up kind of pictures that I need to take off, but I mean, it is growing, and this is to show you that essentially this is a vining plant. When we get it, it's quite small, but it gets quite tall. But yes, Nepenthes has got the origins in Greek. Now, there are several different stories behind where it might be, and this is the word that started in ancient Greek and went into potentially Latin as well. So one of it is there's a word Nepenthes, literally exactly that word, that appears, I think, in one of the, it might be the Iliad or the Odyssey from Homer, so ancient Greek tragedies. And it was, if I'm not mistaken, a panacea, so it was a drug that was given people, it was a bit of a cure-all. So I don't quite know quite where that came from. But going further back, it could be that it was originally two words, ne and benthos. Ne is an interesting one for the Greeks out there, because ne in kind of more modern Greek means yes, but in this case it means no. So no, and then benthos means to grieve, so not grieving. There's another word potentially that again is the Nepenthes, that isn't just from the Homer side of things, where it was one word and it means to dispel pain. So you can kind of see that there are kind of common threads throughout this. So I am very, very curious with this specific word and its origins for Nepenthes on whether or not the Nepenthes plant, the leaves, the liquid that's within the actual pictures has ever been used medicinally for something. So I'm really curious, and again, this would be something that maybe some of the people that live around the locations where these plants would grow and have been growing natively for years, on whether or not this plant has actually been used for medicinal purposes, and that's where all that connection goes, and where it gets the name Nepenthes from. I skipped one, I skipped an M word, so mycorrhizal, which is always a bit of a tongue twister for a lot of people to say, and I get it, and this is the mycorrhizal fungi that is a good thing to add if you're adding it into soil, because it helps the plant kind of deal better with kind of water stresses. But mycorrhizal, so myces, is fungi if I'm not mistaken, and rhizae or rhizes is the plural for roots, or rhiza is one root, so fungus roots. Anybody who knows what a mycorrhizal fungi is exactly that. It's essentially the roots of this fungus that attaches to the roots of your plant, and it kind of helps balance out kind of any watering pressures, whether underwatering, overwatering, all of these things. So yes, mycorrhizal, and it's interesting because it's the word on its own, so mycorrhizal fungi, if you like the way that it's kind of everybody talks about it, mycorrhizal fungi, theoretically is redundant. The fungi is redundant because mycorrhizal has already got the word for fungi in it. But sorry, little thing to geek out about. We're about to get risque here with orchidaceae, so orchids. Even the word orchids as well is, for any Greek person, like you get a bit of an internal giggle with that one. Literally, orchis in, I don't know if you know, I think people use it still in kind of modern Greek as well, but in ancient Greek it literally means testicles. And I would imagine it's something to do about the morphology maybe of the blooms or the plant itself, but yes, orchids, literally when you say orchids, and I'm really sorry to destroy this for people that didn't know this, you are literally just saying testicles. You're welcome, I guess, or I'm sorry, it depends on how you take it. How about the much beloved philodendrons, yeah? So again, you can kind of see it's two words that are smashed together. Philo, which, and this is where it might get a bit confusing, because philo, we were talking before, is the word for leaf. But there are two other words that pretty much sound identical. It's not just English, that could be a bit of a difficult language. Greek, I don't think anybody's surprised by this, but philo could mean leaf. It could be philos, so a friend, or philo, which means to kiss. So in this scenario, so philodendron means to love, the philo element, so that kind of affection part of things. And dendro, again, we talked about this before, is just tree, the word for tree. So the love of a tree. So a philodendron is something that loves a tree because it's usually attached to a tree, yeah? And then we can look at things like pseudobulbs, and I can actually show you something with pseudobulbs. Let me pick it up and show you. So this orchid, and it's looking a bit shriveled at the moment, it needs a bit of watering. So this is a pseudobulb for this Maxillaria tenuifolia orchid, which is the coconut bay orchid. I've talked about this too many times. If you've never heard of this, look it up, buy it. It doesn't matter how much it costs, buy it, because my mind was blown when I smelt the blooms of this, because it literally smells like coconut pie. Insanity. But yes, pseudobulbs. So the Greek origin of this is pseudos or pseftiko, the pseudo part of it there, which means false or untrue. And then pseudobulb, so bulb obviously is the same, but volvos, which was the original Greek word, it means bulb. So fake bulb. So it's not the traditional kind of bulbous kind of plant growth that it is, but it is a pseudobulb, so a fake bulb. How about rhododendron? And I know this isn't a plant that we usually will grow inside. It tends to be, I think it tends to be more outside, but rodon, or rodon, yeah, I have to start the thinking there, means bloom or rose essentially. And rhododendron, the dendron, is rose or bloom a tree. Ta-da! I am living, as I said, I am living my best big fat Greek wedding moments. This entire video going, there you go. This and this, and there you go. Then we've got the stomata that I've talked about on other videos, and hopefully I think I've got a video or an image somewhere and I will show you. And it is the kind of structures on the leaf surface of any plant which kind of open up, and they literally look like lips. They look like a mouth, and they've called it a mouth. Stoma is mouth. Stomata is multiple mouths. Stomata. How about a spathiphyllum? So phylum, phylon, and so leaf, and spathi, the spathi part of that, it means sword. So sword-like leaves. Make sense? Because somebody just looked at it and just went, oh, well, spathiphyllum, they look like they've got like sword-shaped leaves. What do we call it? We call it a sword leaf plant. Duh. And let's wrap up with an X word, or xerophyte. I don't know if you've ever heard of it. Xerophyte. So xerophyte would be the way that you'd say it in English, I think. Pretty sure that's how you'd pronounce it. So if you think about the xerophyte, so it's X-E-R-O phyte. So xero, which is what that first part of the word is, literally means dry in Greek. And then phyton, which is the phyte part of it, so it is a plant, it's a dry plant. This is usually a term that tends to describe a lot of plants that might be growing in arid situations. Again, think of the cactuses, the more succulent type plants. They are xerophytes. They are used to kind of growing in dry conditions, unlike a lot of the tropical plants that are used to growing in very wet conditions. So yes, but I think I shall end on here, because hopefully I haven't bored you all to death. But I know this is something that excites me. I do love a bit of etymology as well, and from previous videos, I think a lot of people do appreciate some of these, and hopefully me being able to explain some of my probably by this point quite rusty Greek pronunciation for some of these things, and maybe giving you that kind of origin of the word might, as I said earlier on, help make that connection So when you think of a plant, you think of the botanical word a bit easier because it literally it is describing what it is a lot of the time. So you're just like, oh yes, it's a spiky thing. So, or it grows in the desert, so it's a xerophyte, or it's an epiphyte. It grows upon. Do you see what I mean? The connections there, hopefully. Do let me know if any of these surprise you. If you think I've kind of muddled up anywhere here and you think there's a Latin origin and you know what the Latin origin is, do let us know. It might be a combination of both because a lot of the Latin words there was still influence from ancient Greek within kind of the Latin language as well. So it can be a minefield with some of these kind of really, really old and ancient languages as to where did it originate from first. But yes, hopefully you've enjoyed and you've been able to geek out with me a bit as well and not just kind of go, and yeah, let me know if any of these surprise you or if you've got a word that you think might be Greek and you want a translation and it's always niggled at you. I mean, you could technically Google it as well, but if you want to ask me, do let me know in the comments down below and I'll see if I can ponder what the answer might be. Because as I said, a lot of the times it's just descriptive. But yeah. Hopefully you've enjoyed. Hopefully I shall see you here soon. And I truly, truly hope that you have a great rest of your day. Thanks. Bye.